Now, I'm going to focus on hospitals. We can actually do something about hospitals. They're environments in which kids are trapped. They ought to be great places. If you have to be there, it may as well be a place self-enhancing, has creativity and has opportunities to grow and develop and maybe gain even skills and relationships. But it can be a dismal place and a worrying place. Separated from friends, school and family, young people can be really concerned. They can become introspective. And they're frequently stressed and anxious. And I think my experience as an adolescent health physician working in a hospital environment for many, many years, I think that if we put some effort into making environments friendly and accessible and developmentally appropriate, but also create opportunities to get off the ward, to be a normal person. And it's why I so much like working at Westmead. And I know that the Children's Hospital at Randwick similarly has a very nice feel. There is an adolescent ward there as well. Clearly, it makes sense to create wards for young people. They don't exist in many places. What's happening in Australia is that with the closure of paediatric units, and I want to mention here, and we'll also take up this issue of looking at what's going on in our health system, because this is something that Orchard's done extremely well. Do surveys of hospitals throughout the country, comparing over a 12-year period the 30% loss of paediatric units. This is incredibly concerning because it means that children are co-located with adults. Also, if there's no place for teenagers to be together, they are co-located either with babies or with adults. And of course, there are differing issues, but often the stress associated with that. But in an environment that's more suitable to young people, and you've got the right sorts of nurses there as well, we can make sure they're getting adequate sleep. They can have activities with their friends in the ward that are informal. There are rules. There are people that are parenting them well. And of course, there's good decision making. It's based on developmental understanding. So, a young person who means a great deal to me, a patient for a very long time, now a young adult, is very, very special in her own right. And we're going to introduce a little video clip of Kylie. Once again, generosity of spirit has led her to share her story with us. And I'm very happy to invite our helper, Michelle, to show this little clip.
Cystic fibrosis, and by the age of 14 was desperately ill, isolated and depressed. She not only needed a double lung transplant, but also the special care of an experienced adolescent health team in order. Kylie was born with cystic fibrosis, and by the age of 14 was desperately ill, isolated and depressed. She not only needed a double lung transplant, but also the special care of an experienced adolescent health team in order to get her back into the mainstream of life.
When I was 12 years old, my illness got pretty bad, and being an adolescent as well made it very difficult to cope. Friends my age didn't really understand, and I felt like there was no point talking to anyone about it because no one was going through what I was. I started to withdraw from people and lock myself away in my room practically every day. I used to be very talkative, but I started to avoid the phone and didn't want to speak to any of my friends or my family. I was always in the dark. I never liked sunlight or anything like that anymore. And I just didn't have any emotion. I was kind of like a zombie.
Kylie's recovery was not going to be just about the surgery, but about having the opportunity to re-engage with her friends and find other ways to feel normal again. We now know that this type of social support is just as important as the traditional medical intervention. Fortunately, in Kylie's case, one of her doctors is not only a specialist in respiratory medicine, but also one of the rare breed of doctors who specialise in adolescent medicine. She had set up a peer support group.
When I was a bit older and I was at the hospital. My doctors helped me out quite a bit. I joined a chronic illness peer support group called CHIPS, and I met a lot of people who'd been through similar experiences to me. It helped me piece together quite a lot of my illness and how to deal with it and how to cope with it. And instead of focusing on all the negatives all the time, it was a lot more life-focused and a lot more about you as an individual rather than you and your illness as a package kind of thing. I went through the 8-week group with a few amazing kids who really understood me and understood where I was coming from, and I understood them, and we related to each other quite well. And I then went on to do leadership training, and I'm now a peer leader myself.
Hi, welcome back. Pretty amazing kid and a wonderful young adult and now a leader. And I just wanted to explain the CHIPS program, which was created at the Royal Children's in Melbourne. And we've adopted the same principles really and created a very active group at the Children's Hospital at Westmead. And the goals of this really are to have young people share and receive validation about their experience, to be heard basically in an empathetic and real way. But to increase self-esteem, encourage a more positive attitude towards living with chronic illness, and certainly you will see that someone like Kylie as a peer leader epitomises that. But also decrease the isolation and loneliness, which I said was a problem with illness, and give leadership opportunities. On many occasions, Kylie and others like her have agreed to come and speak on their own behalf. They've participated in reference groups for the development of the youth health policy in New South Wales, for example. And we call upon them a lot because what they have to say is authentic and very powerful. So just to mention this notion of resilience, a whole big subject on itself, and I'm probably talking to people who understand a lot about it. But it's to have a set of personal qualities that allow one to thrive in the face of adversity. This is what it's about. It's a set of skills: self-efficacy, social competence, adaptability, having an action-oriented approach, having good problem-solving skills, having good people skills is a resilience factor, and a sense of purpose and future. This lovely smiling face is of Danielle Miller, who wrote a book for the mothers of young men called The Butterfly Test. She had an experience as a child with very severe burns, almost died, spent months in hospital. And she says in her book she can remember a little voice in her head saying, "Danielle, you are going to get through this, you are going to be okay." So that sort of self-talk is also helpful. And of course, Michael Rutter, a very eminent psychiatrist from Great Britain, says it's important to approach life's challenges with a positive frame of mind, confidence that one can deal with the situation, and a repertoire of approaches that are well adapted to one's own personal style of doing things. What he's saying to us is that it's not like a cookie-cutter concept. Everyone can't be resilient in the same way. But we do all have the opportunity to learn from experiences, have a sort of a network of supports. And resilience is not just about us as individuals, it's about how we access support of family, peer group, and other institutions, particularly schools and churches and the like. And in regard to being ill, unwell or disabled, once again, how you view yourself is important. Having a self-perception is not handicap. In other words, you might have a disability, but you can be healthy in your mental outlook and in the way you approach your life. These were some of the issues that also came up in some research looking at what is resilience enhancing in the context of a chronic illness. So involvement with household chores, having the same expectations put on you as able-bodied siblings, having the support of family, and peers without overprotectiveness. If there's one thing that children and young people hate, is the overprotectiveness. The helicopter parenting is not enjoyed by children. Having a network of friends with and without disability. Those things will resonate with us. Now, I wasn't planning to talk a lot about parenting, but this is such an important aspect of resilience building throughout childhood. And I want to refer you to those wonderful websites you may already know. It's called Raising Children Network. You can just access it very easily online. My colleagues at the Youth Health and Wellbeing team at Kids and Families in New South Wales is developing resources, including video, role-play, interviews, that are looking at dealing with stress and worry, building resilience through relationship, but also for the very first time, this website is now looking at how to navigate the health system when a child has an illness, disabling condition, and for families, how to actually deal with having a very complexly ill young person. So keep a lookout for that. That's actually coming quite soon. Now look, moving into the area of advocacy, and I'm finding myself increasingly concerned, and my colleagues in adolescent medicine, both here in Australia and overseas, increasingly concerned about the current lack of focus on the needs of kids once they're out of the age group acceptable to pediatrics and child and adolescent health tends to end in the later teens. A lot of kids then need to be transitioned across, which means prepared in advance, well received on the other side, learning the skills of self-management so they can actually handle an environment that is less concerned with developmental issues as we are in paediatric environments, less concerned with you need to get on and take your pills and do what you're supposed to do. Well, that's easier said than done, and sometimes young people do not do so well in those environments. But here in Australia, I think we have the opportunity to work harder to make adult environments more friendly for young adults. And we're talking now about the age group of 18 or 25. We have to focus some attention on that. And we also have to be thinking a lot about preparing kids for transition. And I want to just mention in part a very exciting Commonwealth-funded project we're involved with at the Sydney Children's Hospital Network, called Trapeze, leaping into adult health as part of the Connecting Care project nationally. It's focusing particularly on respiratory illness and on diabetes. But keep your eyes out for more information about that, because shared care, having primary health care and the tertiary environments working more closely together, being advocates for kids when they're ready to move on, it's a really exciting development. And just to make the point, this is a slightly more academic way of looking at it. But in paediatric environments, we are more family focused. We are thinking about developmentally appropriate issues and programs, like we've mentioned, CHIPS, developmentally appropriate programs, use of art. And in adults, there is a slightly more austere environment. And that's not just a criticism, it's just an observation. And then the whole notion of graduating and feeling like you've made it and moving on with a positive glass half full. Now I have an opportunity to be grown up and hopefully make the most of that new